afternoon, good evening to the audience here, and good evening to Deauville. This is the first time I'm doing a parallel address to two audiences. On behalf of the World Digital Summit, I want to thank the IT for Business Forum for partnering with us this year. And I'm very thrilled to be here tonight to talk to you about a changed world, about the unstoppable power of social networks, that you have to use it, or you'll lose it, or they will abuse it. And I'll tell you 6 rules of how you can make a success out of it. But let me first talk for a few moments about tomorrow, about the April in Paris event, because it started last year as a media CEO summit, and this year the organizers, Sigref and Jouve, decided to bring in industry leaders as well, together with media CEOs. So we'll have people from AXA, from insurance, from Danone yogurt. We have 360 Buy in retail and online retailers, and Sanofi in pharma. So it's going to be quite an explosive mix, and especially giving our workshops today that we did here in Paris, we already made a couple of radical decisions that I think is only going to be a preview for tomorrow. I cannot wait for it. We decided that because the markets are all shifting east, we got rid of the word emerging markets. We're just going to call them now the market. And we found out that we need to have, in a world that goes from wireless devices to a mobility world, we need to get better at adapting to cultural differences in behavior. And finally, we also discovered that I didn't know that either, being in the open innovation field, that even luxury retailers have done very successfully crowdsourcing an open innovation project. So I was amazed and I learned a lot today. And I cannot wait for tomorrow for the event in Paris. Let me introduce you real quick first to myself. My name is Simon Schneider. I'm the General Manager of Grand Challenges at INNOCENTIVE. I'm standing here today replacing Barry Liebert, who is on the board of INNOCENTIVE, and he couldn't be here today, unfortunately, giving the speech. But since he offered to still do the speech from the United States via video in his best pajamas, I think he got upgraded. But that's just my opinion. I am the ex-CEO of Omnicompete. I founded a company in the United Kingdom that focused on problem solving using the crowd. And I sold this company 2 months ago to INNOCENTIVE. So in a way, I'm new to the company, but old to the industry. And I want to tell you a little bit now about this power of open innovation and how you can make money of it. First of all, the world has changed. We're living in a world where Facebook and Twitter have the powers of countries. That means they are big. We have companies that started a couple of years ago that are now bigger by magnitudes to old companies like GM. That's this power that have been used because they're organized, they are connected to change countries. They have destroyed companies. If you don't behave, the crowd can also abuse it. And it can destroy entire industries. So how do you make sure that in this changed world, you behave and you do it in a way that you have a clear ROI? These are the 6 rules that I will tell you tonight that you should keep in mind when you do want to engage the crowd that is connected, and we just have to organize them in a powerful, positive way for you. Let me go quickly through the examples. Rule number 1, the crowd can only do small bites at a time. If you want to engage a crowd in a crowdsourcing experiment, don't ask them to build an aircraft carrier for you. You have to do small pieces that the crowd can do as individuals or as a few individuals together as groups. And this is an example of the Longitude Prize in 1714 in Britain, which also exemplifies another thing. What we call today crowdfunding and open innovation is really an old concept. Just with the power of the internet and social networks, we brought it to a new level. The example here exemplifies that we had a huge problem back then. The Royal Navy in Britain could determine the latitude of a ship, but not its longitude. So it came out with this concept of asking the world. Whoever comes up with determining the longitude of a vessel gets a prize, and it was done in different stages, so that if you had a partial solution, you got part of the money, and that way it made it eatable in chunks that were solvable by an entrepreneur. So keep in mind, this is the other point I really like about this example is the Royal Navy in 1714 was an industrial powerhouse that ruled the world. So this industrial complex couldn't solve that problem, but they outsourced it. They outsourced their own R&D, and a small entrepreneur in England solved it. So it's an old concept, but if you do it right, you can get the crowd engaged, and they did it 300 years ago. Another rule is, if you want to engage the crowd in your crowdfunding or crowdsourcing or wisdom of the crowd, whatever concept you're using, you can do it in small steps. Especially if you're a company or a government entity, you don't want to put everything on the plate in one go. You probably want to do it, step by step. That's fine. But whatever you do, you have to do it fully open. This is called open innovation, not semi-open innovation or a bit ajar innovation. And we have seen many examples of big companies that failed because they just thought, oh, we will do it, but we'll do it our way, and we'll keep it just a bit open, and that's a failure. Let me tell you the other extreme of a company that went to basically publishing their biggest secret to the world and got an amazing ROI. This Goldcorp challenge was a gold mine in Canada who couldn't find its gold. So instead of, or actually after having had many geologist experts looking through the data and couldn't find the gold, they decided, let's outsource it. Let's give that data out to the world and have any expert, anybody, submit ideas and solutions. So the story there is that this entrepreneur who bought that gold mine in Canada was running short of money because he couldn't find this gold for many, many years. So with his last money, 570,000, well, that's kind of the legend, it's probably he had more, he put up this prize. And it was solved a couple of months later by two Australians who were in the graphic design business. They created a 3D graphical model that showed where the gold was. So these guys won. The company obviously got the IP to use that model and digged and found it. And as you can see, they found $6 billion worth of gold, and that's just a little graph of how they were doing. So what is the lesson learned here? You need to get over that cultural shift from closed to open. And if you do it right, openness can make you very, very rich. Nevertheless, you need to protect the IP. And that might sound counterintuitive what I just said, but that is why companies, like experts, exist that can help you with it, is how do you be open, but you don't give it all away that you learn later on that you have nothing left. And there are different ways to do it. Part of it is you can anonymize who you are. You can abstract the data. And we'll come to this in an example later. So you don't actually give out the real data, but perhaps something very similar that solves the same problem, and you learn from it, but you don't give away your secret nuclear arsenal data. Believe me, that actually is a real problem. So what we do, we have a big experience in this at INNOCENTIVE, where we help companies buy the IP of the winner and act as the neutral arbiter in the middle. And this is very important in this whole crowdfunding, crowdsourcing industry, is that you need middlemen, not because that makes it very profitable for us, but you need to have a platform where the two sides are meeting, where the people with the ideas get ensured that if they solve that problem, they might have to give away their IP, but it's guaranteed that they're getting paid from whoever is putting up the other side. And so we have run, as INNOCENTIVE, 1,400 open innovation competitions in the last 10 years. We're 10 years old, so that makes us one of the oldest companies in the space. And we have never had any IP transfer problems, and that's very important. So we can give away of the knowledge that we have learned in this to make sure that you know what you're buying, and the IP is very openly transferred. But speaking about the ROI, one thing that's very important that I've seen a lot of times when you talk about crowdsourcing and open innovation is that some people, the early adopters, they jump on the bandwagon and say, great, let's do it. The CEO loves the idea, let's do it. Let's do an experiment, let's do one project. They all jump on it, and 2 years later they look back and say, so what happened? What did we get? And they might say, well, we got like 100 ideas and this and this and this, but down to it, either if they define it as a success or a failure, they cannot quantify it because they didn't start from day one to quantify how they want the goals to be defined. And that is something that's so important. If you believe in this open innovation revolution, then you should jump on it, but make sure you really sit down first and think of what do we want to get out of it and how much are we putting in. The example I'm showing here is a very famous prize, the Netflix prize, which was one of the pioneers, so it has a lot of problems too, but the one thing they did absolutely right is they defined it from the beginning by using finance and math. So what they said, Netflix is a company that rents movies on the internet and on DVDs. They knew that 10% of their own algorithm of matching movies to users would be worth X on their own financial model. And that X was obviously much higher than 1 million. So what they said is, if we can improve our algorithm by 10%, we can easily give out 1 million in prizes because that is less worth than the 10% increase. So it was a very easy calculation that they could say, we can make that risk because we don't have to pay if we're getting a 9% increase. We don't have to pay if it's 11 or 12% increase, and that is worth it. That's exactly what happened. So as you can see, it took them 3 years. They actually gave out milestone prizes. Another thing that was great is they showed for the first time in history, I think, how you can do effective online collaboration because they gave out milestone prizes. So after 1 year, you had a guy who beat the algorithm, but not by 11%, but by, 7%. So they said to him, we give you $50,000 as a milestone prize, but you have to give your solution out to everybody else who was entering. And he did. So that way he shared his ideas with the rest of the pack, and they improved on it, showing that not just one person by himself can change it or can do amazing things by themselves. They need to collaborate. And that's what I like about this example is that you not only define the ROI from the beginning, but also how do you do it in such a way that you get teams to share the incremental results and build upon each other. Well, the one thing that is very important is and we had a very long session actually earlier today about this, that don't just assume that if you put something out there and you say, I got this thing, I'm going to crowdsource it. Don't just assume that the world will come. And don't even just assume it's because of the money. You need to really think of how do you motivate people to enter, but also even if you have the motivation right, you need to make sure everybody knows about it. So don't forget about this part if you're entering in this open innovation world, is that the world really needs to pay attention. One way how you can do it, if you don't want to spend millions on it, is you replicate something that DARPA has done, which is they created a very creative, fun competition, which is called the DARPA Red Balloon Challenge, where DARPA, which is a defense agency in the United States, said the person who finds first the locations, the GPS locations of 10 red balloons on a certain date in the United States gets $40,000. Not that much, but Facebook, Twitter, it was all full of it in terms of people linking with each other, and actually they tried to solve it using social networks for a military problem. Amazing. And finally, I kind of hinted to it, is you need to be very, very clear that if you want to engage the crowd into solving one of your problems as a company or as a government or as a foundation, you need to work a lot on what are you offering them, whether that is financial, recognition, the credit for solving something. Believe it, a lot of engineers and smart people actually they like to solve a challenge. That keeps them up at night. So whatever that value is, it needs to be bigger than what they have to put in. And that is, although that sounds very simple, one of the key lessons and key rules that you have to think about if you engage the crowd, make sure you're offering them more than what you're asking from them. I'm not saying this is going to happen to every company and everybody should use it right now. I think we see problems with it, and these are the few inhibitors that are out there, which is the more open you are as a company, you will have issues with privacy and secrecy. So work on it. I think there are ways around it. You can make sure that you abstract your problem if you don't want to make it open. We have seen companies that give out data, but not all of it. You make sure that you anonymize your data if that's one of the concerns. But also, one of the biggest problems that we have, if you're talking about outsourcing your R&D, it's really a culture problem, because it's a culture shift that you need to say, this room might be the exception where we have the smartest people in this, expertise in this room, but typically you have much smarter people outside the organization in any room that you're ever in, so use them. That sounds great to the CEO, it sounds great to the CFO, but it doesn't sound that great to the middle manager, because he has a budget, he has a team, and what he hears is change means cut my budget and my team. This is one of the biggest inhibitors for open innovation, is that people are protective of their budgets in the way it's done for personal career reasons, and that's one thing that it will change, but not overnight. One way how to change it is the thing on the right is education. We're doing a project with London Business School right now about how do we measure the effectiveness of open innovation projects in a very, very rigid way and in an objective way. So we are just a data provider for this. And part of my mission, part of what I'm doing today is, and this is very condensed because I heard that I only have about 10 minutes for Deauville and about 10 and a half minutes for here. So I want to make sure that I'm keeping it brief, but my vision, my mission is to talk about this tool, to talk about how do we use open innovation in crowdsourcing tools in the right way, what are the case studies, how to do it correctly, how to not do it. And that's why we're doing these projects with LBS, to show education value to organizations like you. And with that, I really want to keep it short. These are the rules. Again, I'm happy, obviously I'm here today, I'm here tomorrow for the entire session of the World Digital Summit. If you have questions, email me, you know to find me. And with that, thank you so much. And I'm happy to take questions later, I guess. Goodbye, Deauville, and cheers.
Voilà, merci Simon Schneider pour ce duplex